Përshëndetje motra.
Mirë se keni ardhur në Trime podcast.
My name is Lejla.
My name's Leonarda.
Welcome home.
Since we posted that anonymous story, we got loads of comments saying how this doesn't just happen in Albania. It happens everywhere around the world. And actually, it happens more so everywhere around the world. And taking away, actually, what we were trying to say in that story and taking that lived experience from the anonymous survivor. So I wanted to actually take this time and talk about your lived experience and, shed a bit of light into that.
What was interesting, isn't it? It's because it's that age old, as soon as you start shedding light onto such serious topics, when there's such a taboo in certain communities like ours, like domestic abuse and violence is a massive taboo, no one talks about it. Immediately it's like you get people's back up. And it's giving like when women in the West talk about domestic abuse, it's like not all men. And it was very similar to that. And what's really frustrating is that it's an attempt to completely invalidate survivors. And so that always frustrates me because all of my work centres around female survivors of domestic abuse, not just in the Albanian community, but in the UK nationwide. So I've been doing that for the last 4 years, working in VOG and domestic abuse, especially like providing recovery to female survivors of domestic abuse and now working with victims, supporting them to safety.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating to see all of that kind of victim blaming, that victim shaming. I even saw comments like, how do you know this woman is telling the truth? And you're like, do you think anyone would come forward and lie about a situation like this? That's not how it works for survivors. Like it takes so much for a victim survivor to come forward and actually discuss what's happening to them. A while back, when I was sitting my domestic abuse intervention and prevention qualification, I focused my final piece of work specifically on the Albanian community and how prevalent domestic abuse is within the Albanian community. Now, there wasn't a lot of research out there, which is worrying. Considering how much we know that abuse and violence is so real in our community. But there is one piece of research that was done by UN Women in 2018, and I've actually got the stats right in front of me, so I can quote it word for word, that 1 in 2 Albanian women, so that's 52.9% of the population, have experienced violence during their lifetime.
How crazy is that?
That's 1 in 2 women, as opposed to 1 in 4 for the rest of Europe.
Yeah.
This piece of research was done just in Albania. So this doesn't even take into consideration women in the diaspora.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And what is more worrying about this is I know how much domestic abuse is underreported for fear of coming forward for the victim and survivor. And if these are the stats already reported, I dread to think that actually how much is what the real numbers are because they're going underreported.
Yeah. Can you only imagine that? And that's why a lot of women just don't even leave.
It's terrifying. There's so many reasons why women don't leave. And the first thing we do with victims and survivors when they come forward and, sharing about what they've been subjected to and the horrors and the terrorism, because domestic abuse is an act of terror on someone's personal autonomy. That's what domestic abuse is. Never confuse it for anything else. It takes huge bravery and courage to come forward for any victim to talk about what they're going through, to report it to the police, to leave their abuser, because we know that that year after a woman leaves their abuser is the most dangerous year of her life, because at that point the abuser has lost complete control. They feel like they've got nothing else to lose, and that actually 72% of women and children in the UK have been murdered by their partner or ex-partner in the first year after leaving. Now that's a statistic in the UK, right? But obviously I can't give any statistics for Albanian women in the UK because that research doesn't exist, and it's really frustrating for me, and it's something that I would absolutely love to do for Albanian women in the UK to carry out a piece of research like that, because I want to know where the victims and survivors are in the Albanian community, because they deserve that help, they deserve that recovery, they deserve that kind of safe way to leave their abuser, they deserve to have that financial independence for themselves, to have that complete freedom and autonomy over their lives. And the fact that there is no research carried out in our community is just, it's mind-blowing to me.
A piece of research like that would give us the chance to break those chains and actually share this with the rest of the community, really educate the rest of the community. Those people that don't believe it, get them to start believing it, because it's happening and it's a reality.
No, this is real. Like this study
Yeah.
in 2018 is very real. You can't fake research. Like research is credible pieces of work done by people, PhDs, scholars, things like that, right? So you cannot fake this research that 1 in 2 Albanian women have been victims in their lifetime of abuse and violence. That's very real.
Yeah. And the best place is the United Nations, which is so embarrassing. It's embarrassing to see that.
It is. Do you know what? It's not even just embarrassing. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
Like these are women who are ending up dead, whether it's by domestic abuse homicide or domestic abuse suicide. That's the real danger behind domestic abuse violence, is that victims end up dead.
Yeah.
And so when people say like, oh, you know, it was just a slap, or he's never hit me, and negating all of the other like emotional, mental abuse, financial abuse, economical abuse, which is huge in our culture, right? And in our community, we're negating how dangerous domestic abuse really is, and the fact that it does end in death.
Yeah, 100%. Or even this fantasy of he's protecting me. Oshjelos.
I hate that. I hate that so much. And I heard it so much growing up from like, from elder women or from older cousins, like Oshjelos. That's complete red flag. Like your partner being jealous to the point where they control everything that you do in your life. That's not a romantic thing whatsoever. And I find it really scary when I'm hearing young girls in the community, like they're like, I really want my partner to be a little bit jealous. What?
Yeah.
No, that is there is no love in that. Like someone who loves you will want you to be free and will want you to act in your own autonomy, will want you to make your own decisions, your own choices. They will not control that for you. And going back to the point of, you know, I think a lot of the times we consider domestic abuse, which is why I don't use the term domestic violence, because it's not just the violence that makes it abusive, that actually there's so many different factors as to what abuse is. And in that research study, the different types of domestic abuse that was found, psychological abuse was the highest. So it was 31.4% of the women had experienced psychological abuse, and second to that was physical abuse.
Are we surprised?
What this piece of research does here is it highlights the fact that abuse isn't just about it being violent.
Yeah, because a lot of people think in our community, if you haven't slapped your wife, you are not an abuser. But they don't understand that if you say to your wife, you can't go to your mum's house.
Or your brother's house. Or your friends. House. Or you can't work.
Yeah. Or I'm going to take the kids away. Like I'm taking my son. I'm doing this. Or, you know, buying houses and only putting it in his name. Not sharing anything. Making you solely financially dependent on him. It's all psychological. But in their heads, it's just being a man.
The thing is abusers abuse because they choose to.
Yeah.
So whether that someone just saying, oh, it's just them being a man, that it's not an excuse to abuse. So I always say this to people, and I learned this in my study when I was studying domestic abuse intervention and prevention, was that there is no other cause for abuse other than choice.
Yeah.
And that is real. This isn't about, oh, this is how they were raised, or this is just in our culture, in our community. Like I'm so keen on removing that, because I'm sick to the back teeth of being like, this is just what we do. This is just how things are. No, abuse and violence is a crime, and it should never, ever be enabled or accepted in our community. Our community is so beautiful. Our culture is so beautiful. These ugly parts, these actual crimes, because domestic abuse and violence is a crime, they should never be in our communities whatsoever. They should never be perpetrated. They should never be enabled at all. And when we constantly focus on just the violence, whilst the violence is obviously very, very real and very, very dangerous, there's so much more to domestic abuse. There's coercive controlling, there's gaslighting, there's mental abuse, there's economical abuse, as we just mentioned. And especially for a lot of the diaspora, where women have come from back home and they're now on spousal visas, they are so vulnerable because maybe they don't know the language, they don't understand the laws of the country. And this isn't just in the UK, this is worldwide, right? And a lot of the time what abusers will do is they will use the fact that they're on a spousal visa as a way to further control them, and to say like, if you leave me, you're going to get sent back home and I will keep the kids.
Which is not true.
Which is not true. No, it's not true. So in England and Wales, by law, if you are on a spousal visa, so for anybody who is listening to this and is a victim of domestic abuse and you are on a spousal visa, there is a law in place that protects you, that you will not be sent back, you're not going to be deported back home if you are a victim of domestic abuse. That it's important to reach out to domestic abuse charities like Refuge, like Women's Aid, because at the moment they are the two largest charities that do help victims of domestic abuse. They've got the resources to do so. But if you're here on a spousal visa, there is help.
Yeah.
And your partner, your abuser is telling you that you're going to get sent back home if you report him. That's not true.
That's not
There
true
are
at
laws
all.
in place to protect victims of domestic abuse on spousal visas. I see it every day in the work that I do in supporting victims to safety. And one of the main initiatives behind Trime was when I was researching the project and I was looking to see if there were charities in the UK that solely help Albanian women who are victims of gender-based violence, whether it's through domestic abuse or honor-based abuse. There was just nothing.
I know.
There was no one, like just one organization that does that. There are other Albanian charities and communities, but they don't solely focus on the abuse and violence part and support and giving that safe space to the women in the community.
Yeah.
There are other communities, there's South Asian communities, there's Afro-Caribbean communities who do have charities specifically for the women who are suffering violence and abuse in the community. We have such a high rate of domestic abuse and violence in our community, and yet in the UK there isn't a single charity just solely focused on that for Albanian women.
Yeah, and I think that also stems down to the diaspora not talking about anything and not actually bringing these issues to light.
Absolutely.
Because they're scared. They, either they've left with their husbands and kids during the war and they've raised the kids for 20, 25 plus years and they've never built a career. The only person that actually makes money is the husband and they've got nothing to their name. It's sad. It's sad for our women in the diaspora. It's sad for our women in Kosovo. It's sad for our women in Albania, in Montenegro, Macedonia, America, all four corners of the earth.
Yeah. Well, the reality is that these safe spaces don't exist. So how can they come forward?
Exactly.
Like when I was leaving my abuser, whilst my abuser was an Albanian, I'm still an Albanian woman. So I have that intersection in my identity. I was really confused about where I go for help because how do I explain to an all-white English charity who have no concept of our culture and our community and the things that we practice, how do I turn to them and actually ask them for help? Just because the person that I was with wasn't Albanian doesn't make I was still Albanian and I needed someone to understand me as an Albanian woman.
Exactly.
And it just didn't exist whatsoever. No. And I'm really passionate with Trime to create that for Albanian women here initially in England, in the UK, and then hopefully worldwide so that they never feel like they don't have a safe space to go to when they are a victim of domestic abuse and violence or honor-based abuse or any form of gender-based violence.
Exactly. I completely agree. The statistics that we found were sparse. They're not, the statistics that you would find in any other community where you've got loads of statistics. But one, if there's just in one report, it's better than no report. If there's just one research paper, that it's better than no research paper. It's credible and it proves my point and your point.
Yeah, that the safe space for women who are victims of gender-based violence is a lifeline.
100%.
It's essential. This isn't a luxury.
No.
And I think that's one of the main drivers behind us doing this. And one of the reasons why when we do get silly comments, we're just like, whatever, because we know why we're doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
We know why we started Trime. Like, we understand the mission behind it.
Yeah.
And the mission behind it really is to provide that route to safety for victims, for Albanian women who are victims of gender-based violence.
And save our women.
Absolutely.
Save our women because they need to be saved.
They deserve it. It's what they deserve at the bare minimum. This is an essential.
Yeah.
This is not a luxury. This is an essential. Yeah. This is a lifeline for women who need it.
Without that safety, how are you supposed to survive?
And I see the comments a lot as well when they mention when my own personal life is mentioned, like, oh, she says this and yet the person who abused her wasn't even Albanian, blah blah. It doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't matter. And I'm so keen for other Albanian women to understand that it doesn't matter who the perpetrator was.
Exactly.
The fact is they were a perpetrator and they abused you and you are an Albanian woman. And regardless of who you dated, whether it was an Albanian man or whether it was completely outside of the culture or whether it was a same-sex relationship, that you were still a victim.
Exactly.
And you still had that intersection of being an Albanian woman. So it is harder for you to be understood by the organisations who do provide safety for victims. I really, really want to create something for Albanian women, no matter who they've been with, no matter what their lifestyle choice is, that they have that route to safety with Trime.
I want Trime to be a space where, God forbid, someone, a female is stuck somewhere, an Albanian woman is stuck somewhere, she doesn't know what to do, she can have Trime. You know, down as, you know, when we have the resources, when we have what we need to help these women firsthand, I genuinely can't wait, because that is our sole mission.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said there is so important. The fact of the matter is this work cannot be carried out without having the resources. So it's really important for everyone who's listening to understand that the reason why we're doing this is because we do want to create that.
Yeah.
And we need the word to get out there as much as possible so that the right people do come to us who do have the resources or the skills or the ability to make Trime an actual, say, for example, a charity or non-profit organisation that can provide that safe space, that refuge for Albanian women in our community.
Exactly, because the reality is it's just us two, and we just don't have that army behind us, the resources to help every single woman in all kinds of situations, you know, and that's why we are relying on the community to help us get there.
Absolutely.
Because as a community, if we can get there, Trime will only be given back. This is what the heart of Trime is
yeah, and that you're right, this is exactly what the heart of Trime is.
But it's you know, we bring that fun so that we can really bring the community together and get our message across that our women deserve to live. Our women, Albanian women, are the best things that have ever happened to our community. We are achieving so much great things. Like, a lot of Albanian women are making us so proud, and they've made us proud. And Trime just wants to be that safe place for all Albanian women. Yeah. We want to build these safe havens for women to come and say, actually, you know what, I've got a safe space at Trime.
Yeah. And the thing is we're alluding to the fact like, oh, maybe it's a charity, maybe it's a non-profit, but we know exactly what it's going to be. We're just a little bit tight-lipped on it until you know, we do have the right resources, until we do have the right people coming forward, because this is real shit. Like, Trime is going to be working with women who are suffering so much abuse and violence and so much trauma that it needs to be done in the right way with the safest people we possibly can find. Yeah.
And we have already received messages from these women, and it's so difficult for me and Lejla. It's so difficult because we just don't have those resources. We do not have resources to help these women yet, and we want to help these women as quick as possible, but that will only happen with the support of the community. It will only really happen with you.
One thing that I know that as Albanian people we're great at is being a community. Is getting that's why Trime has, one of the reasons why Trime has grown so quickly, it's become word of mouth. Like, they've gone viral, but a lot of it's probably been word of mouth. A lot of it's probably been because it's been shared within WhatsApp group chats and, you know, or like Snapchat group chats. Like, that's why it's grown so quickly, because we talk to each other, right? Exactly. We can do the exact same thing when it comes to actually providing those safe spaces, to bringing those resources in, bringing the right people, the right skilled people into Trime who would be interested in doing this for the women in our community. Exactly. I've been doing this for 4 years now. I've already created a non-profit for female survivors of domestic abuse. I've been doing that work for 4 years here in the UK, and it only feels like I have this massive privilege and I have this voice that it has to be used for good. Like, it has to be used for the right things. Exactly. And these aren't claims that we're just making that we can't back. Yeah. These are not just stats, but here at Trime we lead by women's lived experiences. And that's why our thing is empowering and amplifying the voices of Albanian women. Yeah. And why here we centre around Albanian women exclusively. Yeah.
Exactly.
Because no one's done it yet. No one has given this safe space for Albanian women to come forward and be like, yeah, me too.
Yeah, exactly. No one has actually put a magnifying glass on Albanian women like Trime is doing, like you and me are doing. We are giving Albanian women the chance to speak up, to come on the podcast, to talk about their lived experience, and in hopes that Trime becomes relatable. And it already has. We see it in the comments. If you think we don't see the comments, we see every single comment.
Yeah.
Every single comment. We are discussing the ones that comment really real life experiences on there.
Absolutely. And it's clear, and we can hear it. Like, we hear your experiences, we hear what you're telling us. And the reason why we're so hot on deleting and blocking people is because Trime is a safe space. Like, this was never the intention of just doing it for some clout to go viral. It's ended up going viral because it's real shit.
That's exactly
why. So we're not interested in keeping those kind of comments just for the engagement, because I want Albanian women to come to Trime and to be like, oh, this is a safe space. And that happens you have to do that. You have to move through your work in every single aspect, every single area. And these comments are coming from both men and women. And that, you know, like there's no negating that, because violent misogyny is a real big issue in our community for both men and women. And I don't want other women, Albanian women, coming to the community, to the platforms, and being like, oh, these comments are awful, like I don't want to be a part of this.
And being scared off.
The whole point is to create that safety for them, to create that safe space for them. But I know that you've also got some research in the numbers in Kosovo as well.
Yes, I searched high and low, because we're both from Kosovo. You know, we both are raised by Kosovan parents, Kosovan Albanian parents, and I wanted to see if I could find something that was done in Kosovo. This is from the OSCE. It's a led research survey, and it states that out of the population of women in Kosovo that exists today, which is 791,000 roughly, 338,000 women have experienced some sort of sexual harassment, stalking, intimate partner violence or non-partner violence, including psychological, physical or sexual violence since the age of 15. And that is 2 in 5 Kosovan Albanian.
It's so scary. And
So
again,
scary.
like, I just keep thinking that these are only the statistics that are reported. So these are only the women that have come forward to the police, or maybe they've reported it to a victim organisation somewhere. I dread to think what the real numbers are.
Exactly. So in percentage terms, that's 58%, so slightly higher than Albania. Intimate partner psychological violence is 53%. Sexual harassment is 29%. Intimate partner or non-partner physical and sexual violence is 14%, and 8% from stalking.
That blows my mind. And yet, like, it's so crazy, because I do this work, like, I literally live and breathe my work, right? And yet every time I hear stories, I'm like, my breath is taken away. Even as a survivor myself of domestic abuse, there are some stories that take my breath away. And I'm a survivor where I experienced non-fatal strangulation. I experienced so many different forms of abuse, but non-fatal strangulation is really dangerous. So perpetrators who commit non-fatal strangulation are 7 times more likely to kill their victim. And like, that's kind
crazy.
of domestic abuse that I was experiencing. And sometimes when I read these stories, my breath is still taken away. I'm like horrified. Absolutely horrified. In Albania, the perceived seriousness amongst the population in this research study that the UN Women carried out, 75.4% of women believe that domestic abuse and violence is a major problem in Albania. Now, if that's the case, why are we not doing something about it? If 75.4% of women are telling us this is a problem, why are we not doing any serious work to help women?
The people in power need to invest, need to build resources. We need resources in Trime. We need the community help. We need that community help to bring those safe spaces, because I can only imagine when you don't know where to turn to. You know that if you were to go to your local police station, some of them might just laugh at you and might turn you back, because they don't have the resources to deal with your case.
Even as diaspora, some of the biggest issue is the fact that if women do come forward, they then run the risk of losing their connection to the community. They run the risk of being outcasted. They run the risk of being shamed for divorcing. Because that's still a thing. It's still a thing, especially like for women our mums, like age, our mums' generation. And so they run that risk of being isolated from everything and everyone that they know. And we have to take that into consideration, which is why we wanted to build Trime, so that they never feel like there is that disconnect.
Yeah.
If they do come forward and seek help, they're not going to be isolated.
Exactly. It's interesting you say that, because I read a article that came out from Kosovo this summer, and it said something along the lines of where Kosovo had recorded the highest cases of divorce in the older women ever.
Wow.
And obviously journalists being journalists, they would go out and ask people. And I think what it is I think our older women are getting tired, sick and tired. They're reaching those points where their kids are probably leaving Kosovo to go to the diaspora. They've got nothing. That, like, as in, what I mean by that is the house is not full anymore. They've only got their partner, which probably inflicted abuse on them since the beginning of their relationship, and they're probably like, either I'm killing him or he's killing me while I'm leaving.
And that's the reality. And I need people to understand that a lot of time what happens is what we call violence resistance. So a lot of the time victims can find themselves in situations where they have to defend themselves, and maybe the abuser is almost about to kill them, and they have to defend themselves and take the abuser's life.
It's either him or me.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the reality.
Yeah.
This really is the reality, that domestic abuse ends in death.
Yeah, it really does.
And so when we say, I know like in my domestic abuse in the sector and in the community that I've already built with survivors, the reason why I will always stick with the word survivor. And some people don't like it. Some people find it really icky to be called a victim or survivor.
Yeah.
The fact is these are like technical terms. If you were on the streets and you were attacked by someone, you would be what? A victim of a crime.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're in your home and this is happening to you on a daily basis or regularly, are you not then a victim almost every single day? Exactly. Why do we don't shame people if they're attacked in public by a stranger for being a victim, but we shame women who are subjected to abuse and violence within their home as if it's somehow their fault?
It's like it all comes down to the patriarchy and misogyny.
Oh no, absolutely, it always does. And I know that we're going to touch on that in like other episodes, because we do have experts coming in to obviously give their opinion on it. But when we talk about even like the word survivor, it means that you survived something after the fact where other people have died.
Yeah. Domestic abuse is as dangerous as being an alcoholic.
Oftentimes when victims have experienced domestic abuse and violence, you mentioned about, it's serious, like alcoholism, serious, addiction is serious, of course it is. A lot of the times victims then do have those symptoms of alcoholism, of poor mental health, mental illness, of addiction, because they don't know how else to process and cope with the trauma.
No, 100%.
And so this is cyclical. This is a cycle that's going to keep repeating itself over and over again, generationally, unless we do something about it now.
Exactly.
And which is why I will say this to Kingdom Comes, it ends with us and it ends here with Trime.
Yeah, it's a serious matter. I think everyone in our community needs to understand the seriousness of this.
And stop trying to hide away from it. This is real. This is really happening.
Yeah.
No amount of comments is going to change that.
Yeah, it's a
no
pandemic.
Amount of, it feels like it's a bit of like willful ignorance. Like, hear no evil, see no evil. You can try to be willingly ignorant, blissfully ignorant, but it's happening. Yeah. And Albanian women are ending up dead because of it.
It's incredibly dangerous. And we need to, it ends here. It ends with me and you. We want everyone in Trime to be safe.
Well, yeah. And this is why it was rooted not just about domestic abuse and violence. It was very much about gendered-based violence, because we understand that the women and girls in our community have so many different complex needs and different reasons why they are suffering abuse and violence, whether it's within the home from a parent or in an intimate partner relationship, or familial abuse, whether it's a brother or an uncle or a cousin or whatever, or whether it's actually the wider community that is perpetrating that honour-based violence and abuse. That Trime wants to become that safe space for them, and it's not going to exclude Albanian women just because they didn't have an Albanian partner. Like, come on,
exactly,
be so for real.
And also, Trime won't exclude anyone that for example, myself, that I have the best partner that God could have ever given me. It's not going to exclude women like me. Trime does not exclude women like me. It welcomes every single woman.
Absolutely.
Every single Albanian woman. So please do not feel like you need to have some sort of lived experience to be part of Trime. We actually need you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So much.
Absolutely. Because what happens as abuse and violence survivors is we do then have to tap into like therapy to try and recover, to try and somehow get that healing. And this is why mental health is such a big sticking point for the podcast, because we're talking about real lived violent experiences from women, and we need to somehow get them to safety and then provide them healing and recovery.
And that's where those women come in.
Absolutely.
Because
we need those women that don't have that lived experience. Yeah. We need your support. We absolutely do need you. You're going to be like the backbone, because for the women who are suffering from abuse and violence, they're going to need your strength. They're going to need you to be like that right arm for them.
Exactly. And, you know, I mean, when I was imagining Trime, really, you know, making my imagination work, I think of someone that is trying to escape, whether it's from family, partner, whatever it is, and finds Trime and can finally feel safe and grow into the woman they want to be.
Yeah, and it's so hard, isn't it, when you are, I guess, trying to break like a generational curse. Like this is, and I genuinely think it's an absolute curse. What I think makes it a curse is the fact that in our community we do not hold perpetrators accountable.
100%.
Perpetration is a choice.
Yeah.
Regardless of any kind of mental health need, regardless of any addiction.
Yeah.
Perpetration is a choice. Abusers do that because they choose to abuse.
Exactly. We need to hold them accountable, and where women are free, where Trime is known by everyone.
Yeah.
And I actually hope to God that even perpetrators are scared of Trime. I genuinely, I hope they feel the fear
and
of
I can
Trime.
hear the fear in the comments. I hear the fear in the backlash and in the hate comments, because what Trime has done is given that voice to women exclusively. And I think for the first time, women are like, oh shit, like I'm actually seen and heard here.
Exactly.
And if this doesn't centre around the needs of men, this centres solely around the needs of Albanian women. And that must be really scary for a lot of people, because it's a big change, because our community centres around the needs of men.
Massive.
No longer, not in Trime.
Exactly, not in Trime. And you know, Trime is providing, first of all, that safe space. We've said safe space so many
times,
but we're still gonna say it. We're still gonna say it. But now Trime exists, and now we are giving those women that opportunity to, if they want to be educated in something, they've got it. If they want to be safe, they've got it. If they want to go therapy, they've got it. If they want advice, they've got it. If they want a motor, they've got it. If they want flea massage, they've got it. Like,
and this is,
do you know what I mean?
This is what we are manifesting, what we're envisioning for Trime.
Exactly. But we really, really, really need the community.
We need you.
Yeah, we really do.
We need your help. Keep talking about us, please. Like, keep telling people about what we're doing here. There's a reason why we are doing everything we are doing, and it truly is to help our women.
Something interesting also from this report is how a lot of these cases are reported to the police. So it's really low. It breaks my heart how low it is. So only 2% of women that are in current partner violence reported to the police.
That's so low, yeah.
10% of women that have left their partner that subjected them to domestic abuse reported to the police. Only 9% of women that have experienced domestic abuse from a non-partner violence, so this could be
family, community,
1% of women report sexual harassment, and 2% of women report stalking.
And yet 75% of Albanian women believe that it's a real issue in our community.
The highest number here is 10%, when women feel safe enough to report the perpetrator. but yet we've got 58% of women that are experiencing domestic abuse in current relationship in
That's
Kosovo.
just in Kosovo, yeah.
That's just in Kosovo. And then and I mean, I always talk about me seeing protesters and seeing a woman that has died in the hands of at the hands of her perpetrator, and it makes me so angry. And what made me even more angrier is seeing the statistics. It's worse than cancer.
It's a real reality.
Yeah.
It's so dangerous. And if you are listening to this, or you know someone who is currently suffering from domestic abuse and violence, please reach out to the relevant charities who can help. And I know the charities will differ across the world depending on where you are. In the UK, you have Women's Aid and Refuge. We'll do some research to see what else we can find for America, Europe, and back home, and pop some links in our description down below here. It is really important that if you do want to leave your abuser, that you do it in the safest way possible, and that is with the help of the charities who have the resources to do so. And for the rest of you who are here listening thinking, oh my god, this is unbelievable, these statistics are unbelievable, now you've heard it, now you've seen it, you can't unsee it. We need your help. Please stick around, support us with Trime.
Faleminderit motra. Tung ner.